Pete Buttigieg has a terrible idea, and I'm going to call him Pete for the rest of this video just because that last name is, I mean, it's just hard to pronounce. So Pete has a terrible idea, and it has everything to do with the Supreme Court. Now, obviously, right now, Democrats, liberals, very concerned with the makeup of the Supreme Court. There's a strong conservative tilt. Let's say I'll come back to conservative or Republican and Democratic judges in a second, but strong conservative tilt on the Supreme Court, and there are all these ideas floating around, basically around court packing, adding more seats to the court so we can get more Democrats onto the court and kind of rebalance those scales. And this is not a new idea. This is not a radical idea. FDR tried to pack the court to get his New Deal legislation through. We didn't always have a 9-seat Supreme Court. As far as I can remember, we started with 6 seats. We went up to 10 or 11, and then came back down to 9. So there's a history here of adding and deleting seats. It's not something that's radical or new. And it makes sense if you are in a party and you feel like that party is not represented in the Supreme Court, that you would want to balance it out. Now, I don't have anything inherently wrong with reforms to the Supreme Court. There's some reforms that I support, but Pete's idea is bad. And here, let me encapsulate his ideas as quickly as possible. He wants to add seats to the Supreme Court, 6 seats, so there'd be 15 seats total. 5 seats would go toward Democrats, 5 seats would go to Republicans, and the remaining 5 seats would be chosen unanimously by the other 10. So 5 Republican seats, 5 Democratic seats, and 5 seats chosen unanimously by the Republicans and the Democrats. Now, 2 problems with this. One giant glaring problem is that, as far as I understand the Constitution, this plan is unconstitutional because the Supreme Court cannot appoint itself. You cannot have Supreme Court justices appointing other 5 justices. That would require a constitutional amendment, which would just be a massive undertaking that, in this case, I submit would not be worth it. But let's even say for a second that this plan is constitutional. It's still a terrible idea, and here's why. Right now there's this notion that the Supreme Court is political, that Supreme Court justices are just as political as politicians, and they make decisions based on their political bent. If they're Republicans, if they were appointed by a Republican president, they make decisions along conservative lines. If they were appointed by a Democratic president, they make decisions based on liberal lines. And I mean, this is terrible for the court's reputation, but that's really where we're at now, is people perceive the court as being just purely political. And what this plan does is it leans into that further. It says, you know what? The court is political, and the only way around that is to make it a balanced politics on the court and have equal amounts Republicans, Democrats, and then moderates, or whatever you want to call the other 5. I don't think we should be leaning into that idea of the Supreme Court, and I submit to you that that's not even an accurate representation of the Supreme Court. If you look at decisions that the Supreme Court makes, roughly 80% of the time, there's a supermajority. There is near unanimous, or in many cases, unanimous agreement on a decision, or a 7-8 vote in favor of the majority. Now, that's like roughly 80% of cases. The outliers are the ones that are split along partisan lines. And of course, outliers are the ones that the media covers, so that they're all we see are the ones that are split along partisan lines. The vast majority of cases do not divide the justices along political lines. So what that means is, if you believe that the Supreme Court makes decisions based on party allegiance, and you then you went in to predict how each justice was going to vote for each decision, and you did that based on their party, based on the party that appointed them, you would be wrong 80% of the time, which is a large amount of the time. So there is this perception the Supreme Court has as being political and as just going along with the party that appointed them. And that's really just not true. It may appear true or be true in some cases, and by no means am I saying that the court is apolitical. But the fact is that justices make decisions based on the law and their interpretation of the law. If they're originalists, maybe they look at the founder's intent, or maybe they prioritize precedent and stare decisis, but they make decisions based on the law. They don't make decisions based on what party appointed them. And even if that was not true, it is a reputation that we should preserve. The entire point of the judicial branch, and the reason that we have lifetime appointments for justices is so that we remove them as much from the political muck as possible. That should be our goal. Even if we're falling way short of that goal, our goal should be to get justices in the Supreme Court as far away from the political muck as possible. As far away. Now, that is the opposite of what Pete's plan does here. Like I said, it leans into that idea of a partisan judicial branch and just tries to, oh, there's a dog down there, and just tries to even it out the scale. So, if you want to further emphasize the judicial branch as being just political in nature and being no different, really, from elected officials in the House or the Senate, then maybe this is a great plan for you. If you're someone like me who wants to rebuild and preserve the court's reputation as being apolitical, as making decisions based on the law, then this is a terrible idea. As usual, though, please do let me know what you think in the comments below of Pete's plan. Do you support expanding the amount of seats on the Supreme Court? Are you concerned with the conservative tilt on the Supreme Court? And also, if you appreciate the conversation and you appreciate politics with nuance, click subscribe.